Hey there, this is Natalie, and after making my video about what happens next for Reunited after the Dead End Party part ways at the end of Season 1 of Mushoku Tensei, some of you asked me to do a similar video for Eris, so here it is. Naturally, where this is all about what she does after leaving Rudeus at the end of the anime season, there will be spoilers, though I'm going to be focusing on the time between her leaving and being reunited with Rudy, along with how that happens, so I won't be going quite as far into the future as with the Reunited video, where I've already covered things like whether Eris has children in other videos. I've also covered why she left, so I'm going to be going straight from where we last saw her in the anime, travelling with Ghislaine to the Holy Kingdom of the Sword with her new short haircut. Now, Eris's intention is to go to the Sword Sanctum and train under the Sword God, a man named Galfarion, who is the head of the Sword God style, and who previously taught Ghislaine. There are three main combat styles in Mushoku Tensei's setting, which are the Sword God style, which is an aggressive style that we've seen plenty of already, owing to Ghislaine being at king level in this style, the Water God style, which is more based on countering and so has more of a kung fu type feel to it, and the North God style, which is a style that uses trickery and tactics, and has branches focused on things like stealth and infiltration, so is more like a ninja arts kind of style than a pure combat martial art. Now, each of these styles has ranks, exactly the same as the ones for the magic arts, which we've seen Rudeus, Roxy and Sylphie working for. So the ranks are beginner, intermediate, advanced, saint, king, emperor and god. These work kind of like belts in real-world martial arts, where it isn't just based on general fighting strength, but also on knowledge of the techniques at the level in the style. So someone like Reunited, who is a very powerful warrior but uses a tribal style unique to the Spurred, wouldn't be able to get the rankings in a style like the Sword God style without learning the techniques, even if he could be considered at around king level as a fighter in terms of who he could stand up against. What this means for Eris is that for the 3 years she was travelling without her Sword God style teacher, Ghislaine, she has improved her skills a lot through real combat and training with Reunited, but she hasn't gone any further in terms of higher level techniques from her chosen style. By training at the Sword Sanctum under the Sword God, the person at the highest level in this style in the world, she aims to go up the ranks and become strong enough to be able to stand beside Rudeus. That, however, is not her only aim. Traumatised by her own inability to do anything during the encounter with Orsted, and hating him for almost killing Rudeus for seemingly no good reason, Eris has her sights set on becoming strong enough to defeat the Dragon God. She will end up facing him, but things won't turn out like she expected, and I'll come to that later. For now, as she begins her training arc, those are her motivations, and they're very powerful ones. She will, at least initially, think and care very little about anything other than those two goals, and will work tirelessly to strengthen herself. Now, unlike with Reunited, where we don't see much of what he's doing while he's away from Rudeus, with Eris we do get extra chapters at the end of some volumes that cover Eris's time at the Sword Sanctum, so we do know quite a lot about her experiences there, which Rudy isn't party to. Though the first time we really see the Sword Sanctum and what Eris has been doing is at the end of Volume 9, 3 volumes after she left, and she's been training there for 2 years when the story of what happened when she arrived is told to the audience. If the anime once again adapts 6 volumes for Season 2, we may see this stuff adapted about halfway through, though the parts outside of Rudeus's point of view, they do have a bit of leeway when it comes to where to show things chronologically, as they don't affect the continuity of what's going on with Rudeus. This means they could move them, put them in an OVA, or even leave them out altogether, so we can't really guess how the anime will handle Eris in Season 2 while she isn't alongside Rudeus. Still, this would be a great scene to see animated, as you'll see. What happens is, Eris arrives in front of the sword god, Galfarion, and all of the students, who include his daughter Nina, who's 18 and at the Sword Saint level, and who is expected to reach Sword King by the age of 20, and later become the next sword god, and her cousin Gino, who's 14, and while not as dedicated as Nina, and somewhat behind her, also due to being younger, is also considered a possible successor for the sword god. But Eris basically ignores everybody, and to the shock of everyone there, including even Ghislaine, who's come with her, she tells the sword god that she isn't interested in a lightweight like him. All of the students can't believe the audacity and are really looking forward to seeing him beat the arrogance out of her, but Galfarion recognises the bloodlust that's fueling her, and says he likes the look in her eyes. But he knows that someone like that would only be seeking strength from this place for one reason, and so he asks her who she wants to kill. When Eris answers that she wants to kill Orsted, the dragon god, Galfarion bursts out laughing, saying that yes, compared to him, he probably is a lightweight, and also that he'd thought he was the only one who wanted to kill him. Nobody else watching this gets it. They think it's bizarre that some random teenager has come and insulted the sword god, and he's just laughing about it. But that's because, while they've heard of the dragon god, it's only Galfarion who understands what Eris means by saying she deadass wants to be able to kill him. She wants to become the strongest in the world. It appeals to him, not only because he also wants Orsted dead, but because he can tell Eris is really serious. But he tells her talk is cheap, and asks if she can actually do it. Eris replies without hesitation that she will. The sword god then makes her fight Gino, who she violently disarms before anyone declared the fight to have begun, something that the other students again see as hugely disrespectful, but which the sword god accepts as a victory. Then she has to fight Nina. The sword god tells them to face off properly first this time, because although there's nothing wrong with sneak attacks, he wants to see how Eris deals with someone who's expecting her. They're fighting with wooden swords, but as their swords clash, Eris's is smashed to pieces. Nina believes she's won, but Eris doesn't see things that way, and without her weapon, she just starts wailing on Nina with her fists. Once she's beaten her up, Eris picks up Nina's sword and realises it's suspiciously heavy. It's implied that Nina was given a cheat sword for the fight because the other students so badly wanted to see Eris put in her place. With 2 students beaten to the sword god's satisfaction, he decides to test Eris out himself. He's able to immediately knock her out, even going lightly on her. He's still the sword god, and she's still at the start of her training arc after all. But he declares that she will become his student, and also gives her the rank of Sword Saint there and then, much to the dismay and jealousy of those watching. For the next 2 years, Eris trains single-mindedly with Ghislaine, and doesn't pay any attention to anybody or anything else, but Nina has maintained a hate boner for her all this time. One day some of the girls are talking about boys, and as Eris walks past, Nina shouts over to Eris that she'll probably be a virgin until she dies, because all she cares about is training. Eris proudly informs her that she's not a virgin, and while she normally never talks much to anyone, starts going on about Rudeus and how great he is, including mentioning that he had landed a scratch on Orsted. Eris doesn't seem to have considered that Rudeus might have taken the way she left as a breakup, and is still talking about him as her boyfriend, who she'll be back with when she's finished training. Nina is as mortified as you might expect. Eris is younger than her, and to her mind, just the worst. And yet she not only claims to have a boyfriend, but one who is supposedly some kind of legend. She doesn't want to believe he's real, and so she pays an information broker to find out about him. Unfortunately for Nina, in the time since Eris last saw him, Rudeus has become quite widely known, where he was for a time hoping that by spreading his name by doing heroic things as an adventurer, anyone who knew anything about where Zenith was would be able to find him and get word to him. He now has a reputation for, among other things, single-handedly slaying a dragon. This really did happen, by the way, though the dragon was wounded and the story has of course been exaggerated as it spread. Nina also learns where Rudeus currently is, at the Ranoa Magic University. Nina now is so salty that only a very stupid plan will make her feel better. She decides it would be fun to go to the university, which at a 3-month trip away from the Sword Sanctum isn't really that far away in Mushoku Tensei travel terms, beat Rudeus in a duel, and bring him back as her prisoner to get one over on Eris. She sets off immediately. But when she arrives, she ends up witnessing a scene we, by this point, have already seen from Rudeus's perspective in the light novel. Actually, he even notices Nina lurking around during these scenes, though we and he don't know who she is at the time, so he just talks about a beautiful swordswoman. What is happening here is that it's the beast folk's mating season, and because of circumstances involving Rudeus's 2 friends, Linnea and Persena, who were both essentially princesses within their beastman tribes, a lot of random beastmen are lining up to challenge Rudeus to matrimonial battles, which if they won, would entitle them to marry the girls in question. Rudeus isn't trying to marry Linnea and Persena, but they've gotten him to kind of defend them during the mating season, given they're both highly sought after mates by people who want to become tribe chiefs, and they don't want to be dealing with it. Nina first sees Rudeus easily beat up one young beastman, but then after hearing he's now gone to the library, goes there to see a whole queue of them lining up to fight him. Rudeus at this time is actually trying to avoid the hassle by holding up in the library, but Nina doesn't know that. But then, the immortal demon king Badigadi shows up. He's Kishirika's fiancé and is a huge demon with 6 arms and jet black skin, who is immortal and terrifying. He says he wants to fight Rudeus too, and the beastmen, who think he should have to wait his turn, all turn on him. Nina finds herself joining in the attack somehow, and then, along with everyone else, she's cut down instantly by Badigadi. But then, the next thing she knows, Badigadi really is having a duel with Rudeus, and the whole university has shown up to watch. Again, this is part of the story that we've already seen from Rudeus's perspective by this point, but seeing it from Nina's perspective, well, she just sees Rudeus manage to instantly blow away the top half of Badigadi's body. What she sees on her trip definitely has a humbling effect on Nina, who returns back home and changes her attitude towards both training and Eris. The next time we see Eris is a year later, in a side story at the end of volume 10. She's been training in solitude for a while now, and thinks she's become stuck in a rut in her training. She still can't see how she can become strong enough to defeat Orsted. On this particular day, she returns from the lonely spot she's found to train in, and finds a man outside the Sword Sanctum, who she tells to get out of the way, because she's tired and just wants to get inside and sleep. He's a very weird looking guy, in rainbow coloured robes, with a tattoo of a peacock on his cheek, and his hair fanned out in a strange way. He tries to introduce himself as Orba, the peacock blade, and to ask to meet with the sword god, but Eris is having none of it and has drawn her sword. The man senses so much bloodlust from Eris that all he can do is draw his swords, because he uses 2, and they fight. He seems to have the upper hand, but Eris is still willing to fight him to the death when the sword god appears and demands that they stop fighting. The sword god refers to the man as North Emperor, and it seems he has already heard about Eris and recognised that she's the one they call the Mad Dog. I was going to make a reference to Goro Majima here, but I wasn't really sure how many people would get it. Orba Corvette, the North Emperor, has come here at the sword god's request, specifically to train Eris. This is because the sword god believes that she will need knowledge of the North style to oppose Orsted, who knows every technique from every style. He reveals to Ghislaine that he's also written to someone from the Water God style for the same reason, but we don't yet find out who it will be. When we do, it's in the extra chapter at the end of volume 13. Here, Water God Raider Leah, a woman in her 60s, comes in response to Galfarion's letter. She's brought with her her own student, Isolde Cruel, who she wants to have observe the Sword God style in return. At first, Raider thinks she'll be teaching the well-mannered Nina, but then the Sword God brings out Eris. Raider immediately assesses that Eris, who reminds her of a wild monster, is not suited to the intricate Water God style. The Sword God laughs and says he knows that, but she needs to see all of the styles and learn how to fight against them because she wants to take down Orsted, something he believes she can do. Raider says she doesn't want to waste her time on someone with no talent, and says she first wants to see his student best her student, Isolde. Nina also wants the chance to spar with Isolde, so they all fight. Isolde easily beats Eris, who isn't able to land a single strike on her. The Water God style is a very bad match for someone with an aggressive fighting style, as it's all about receiving attacks and countering. But Nina manages to beat Isolde. Raider believes this is because of the presence of Eris, which has made Nina keep her pride in check and focus on her training, where Isolde, who had not had a rival like that, let her pride get the better of her. She also notes that while Nina had been slower and weaker than Eris in her strikes, she had no real emotion or aggression behind them, unlike Eris, and this made it harder for Isolde to react to her. All in all, the Sword God and Water God see that having these three train together will help all of them deal with some of their weaknesses. They decide they should train together, with Eris's goal to be to beat Isolde, and Isolde's learning to beat Nina. During their training time together, Isolde quickly realises that Eris, despite her reputation for being arrogant and difficult to communicate with, is actually very ready to accept criticism if it can help her improve. And she explains to Eris that the reason why she has trouble against the Water God style is that Eris emanates hostility, which Water God fighters are good at detecting and using against their opponents. Nina, who doesn't really understand why Eris is always so tense and furious anyway, agrees, and she also recommends Eris takes more time to relax and take care of herself in her daily routine. Eris now also gives Nina some advice on how to beat her, based on what she learned from Rejured. The three of them actually do end up working well together, and eventually become the closest thing Eris has ever had to female friends her own age. Nina even persuades Eris that she ought to take a bath after training, because apparently she generally stinks, and she'd been assuming this wouldn't be a problem because Rudeus used to sniff her dirty clothes. After a year, Eris eventually reaches an even footing with Isolde. Next time we see Eris, she, Nina and Gino are in front of the Sword God for him to decide who will be the next to receive the title of Sword King. Gino puts himself out of the running by giving a bad answer to the Sword God's question about what separates Sword Kings from Sword Saints, and so Eris and Nina are made to fight for it. Incidentally, his answer was weapons. Nina answered desire, and Eris resolve. The Sword God told Eris her answer was wrong, and she insisted it wasn't. Eris also says that she doesn't even care about the title of Sword King, only about how strong she actually is. This is probably why Eris never goes on to reach Emperor rank officially later in the story, though she almost certainly could have been recognised as one if it mattered to her. Eris beats Nina, who is frustrated but resolves to keep on with her training. The Sword God then not only names Eris the new Sword King, but also gives her the title of Master, which means he no longer thinks he has anything to teach her, and which is a title not even Ghislaine or the current Sword Emperors hold. In recognition of this, Eris is invited to choose one of the Sword God's 7 special swords for herself. Now Eris has basically graduated, she receives a letter from Rudeus. I'm not going to go into why he sent it because that's a very big spoiler for the whole series, and I've already covered it in my video about Turning Point 4. So if you want spoilers beyond just Eris's training arc, then you can check that out. Eris had actually forgotten almost everything she learned about reading and writing from Rudeus, where she's been fixated only on fighting for years, so she has to have the letter read out to her. There's actually a cute side story from later on where Rudeus finds her trying to read a book about cats and helps her to read it, and it's the only time he's ever seen her try to read a book as an adult. She just likes cats enough to make it worth the effort, apparently. Still, she hurries off after finding out what was in the letter and rushes as fast as she can to Rudeus's home, which is still close to the Ranoa Magic University. When she arrives, however, she learns from Rudeus's family who are living with him that he's gone off to fight Orsted, a fight he's been preparing for a long time, and which they're very afraid he won't come back from. Eris races there to join the fight and manages to save Rudeus. I won't spoil the outcomes of the fight in terms of Orsted and Rudeus because again it's a major plot point and that's not really what this video is about, but Rudeus does basically fall in love with Eris all over again because of what she does here, and she becomes his wife from then on. If you want to know more about that and what happens after all of this in terms of their relationship, then you can check out my video about Rudeus's love life and the one about Rudeus's children. So that's what's next for Eris after the events of season 1 of the anime. Let me know what you think about Eris's training arc in the comments. By the way, just as a quick plug, I'm currently doing a series on my channel reading out the Mushoku Tensei prequel web novel Old Dragon's Tale, which has a lot of important lore in it and features Laplace as the protagonist. It's a really good story and I'm really enjoying doing the readings, so please consider checking them out if you're interested. As always, thank you to my supporters on Patreon who are on screen right now, as well as to everyone who helps me out by subscribing to my channel and watching my videos. Thank you for watching this one, and I hope to see you again very soon.